The massive crystalline chambers of the Galactic Council hummed with tension as Ambassador Zethkar reviewed the final transmission from the Sol system. His 6 eyes focused on the holographic display showing Earth's last evacuation ships disappearing beyond the outer rim territories. The blue marble that had once housed humanity now sat empty, its cities dark and silent. "They actually did it," whispered Council Member Vrixta, her tentacles coiling nervously around her ceremonial staff. "The humans have abandoned their homeworld entirely." Ambassador Zethkar's mandibles clicked in what passed for satisfaction among his kind. The Korthek delegation had pushed hard for this outcome during the heated debates of the past solar cycle. Humanity's expansion rate had been deemed too aggressive, their territorial claims too bold. When the Council voted 847 to 23 to restrict human colonization to a mere 12 systems, most expected fierce resistance. Instead, humanity had surprised everyone. No military buildup, no diplomatic protests, no desperate appeals to allied species. Within 6 standard months, every human settlement beyond their designated zones had been voluntarily evacuated. Even Earth itself was abandoned, leaving behind a ghost world of empty megalopolises and silent spaceports. "Perhaps we underestimated their compliance," murmured Senior Counselor Threshkin, his bulbous head swaying thoughtfully. The intelligence report suggested humans were far more combative. The Altarian representative, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's ambient light, chimed in harmonious tones. Their psychological profiles indicated strong territorial instincts and pack loyalty behaviors. This withdrawal contradicts every predictive model our xenopsychologists developed. Zethkar dismissed their concerns with a wave of his primary arm. Clearly our pressure tactics worked. Faced with overwhelming opposition from 900 species, they chose discretion over destruction. The galaxy is safer with humanity contained to their minor systems. The hologram shifted to show the designated human territories, a sparse cluster of unremarkable star systems along the galaxy's outer edge. Mostly Class M worlds with harsh climates, minimal strategic resources, and no major hyperspace lanes. Perfect for containing an ambitious species while allowing them enough room to prevent desperation-driven aggression. "Our monitoring stations report all human vessels have crossed into their assigned boundaries," announced the Vegan observer, his mechanical voice echoing through the chamber. "Long-range sensors show significant construction activity beginning on several worlds. They appear to be establishing permanent settlements." Counselor Vrixta's tentacles relaxed slightly. "Good. Let them build their little empire in the outer rim. Those systems are so far from major trade routes that they'll remain economically isolated. Within a few generations, they'll be just another minor species grateful for whatever scraps of technology we allow them to trade for." The assembled delegates murmured approval. The human problem had been solved with surprising ease. No messy wars, no refugee crises, no martyrdom to inspire other aggressive species. Just quiet compliance and voluntary exile. Ambassador Zethkar began compiling his report for the Korthak High Command. The humans had been neutered as a galactic threat without firing a single shot. Their withdrawal proved that even the most warlike species would bow to sufficient political pressure. It was a model that could be applied to future problems. "I recommend we maintain surveillance on their activities," suggested the Centaurian delegate, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "Not out of concern, but to study how effectively isolation contains expansionist tendencies. The data could prove valuable for managing other species." Several council members voiced agreement. The scientific value of observing humanity's decline would justify the minimal resources required for monitoring. Within a few centuries, they would likely witness the gradual technological regression and social fragmentation that typically affected isolated populations. The session concluded with formal declarations of success. Trade sanctions against human space would remain in effect. No alien vessels would enter their territory without council permission. No human ships would be permitted beyond their boundary systems. The galaxy's newest quarantine zone was officially established. As the delegates filed out through the chamber's bioluminescent corridors, few paid attention to the final sensor readings from human space. Construction activity was indeed intense, but the energy signatures seemed unusually sophisticated for a recently displaced civilization. The pattern suggested massive industrial projects spanning multiple worlds simultaneously, but such details seemed irrelevant now. Humanity had been successfully contained. The galaxy's established powers could return to their comfortable routines of trade negotiations, territorial disputes, and technological exchange. The brief excitement over humanity's rapid expansion was already fading into historical footnote status. In the depths of the Council archives, automated systems filed away terabytes of data about human settlements, military capabilities, and expansion patterns. The information was marked for long-term storage, unlikely to be accessed again unless humanity somehow became relevant to galactic affairs. None of the Council's finest minds questioned why a species capable of terraforming dozens of worlds in mere decades had abandoned their conquest so easily. None wondered why humanity's evacuation had been so perfectly coordinated, moving billions of people and massive amounts of infrastructure with almost impossible efficiency. The galaxy's most powerful civilizations had successfully isolated what they perceived as a threat. They celebrated their diplomatic victory and prepared to enjoy the peace that would surely follow. After all, what could 12 isolated systems possibly accomplish that would matter to a galaxy containing millions of inhabited worlds? The answer to that question was already taking shape in the Outer Rim, but it would be years before the Galactic Council realized their mistake. By then, humanity would be ready to remind the galaxy why their species had once been considered dangerous enough to exile in the first place. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of Titan Station, watching the controlled chaos of humanity's greatest undertaking unfold across the Kepler 442 system. Massive cargo haulers moved between orbital construction platforms like metallic whales, their hulls scarred from countless jumps through uncharted space. The sight still amazed her, even after 18 months of overseeing the project. "Ma'am, the Australian contingent reports Foundation City is ahead of schedule," announced Lieutenant Commander Torres, his tablet displaying real-time construction data. "The atmospheric processors are online and they're expecting the first civilian transports within 3 weeks." Chen nodded, her weathered face reflecting satisfaction. The evacuation from Council space had been humanity's greatest logistical achievement, but what came next would define their species' future. While the Galactic Council celebrated their diplomatic victory, humanity had begun the most ambitious undertaking in their history. "Any word from the Deep Space Survey teams?" she asked. "Captain Morrison's group found another cache in the Epsilon Eridani region," Torres replied. "Preliminary scans suggest it's even larger than the discoveries on Kepler 438c. The xenoarchaeology teams are requesting immediate deployment." The caches had been humanity's first stroke of luck in their exile. While establishing settlements on their assigned worlds, geological surveys had uncovered vast underground complexes clearly built by some ancient civilization. The structures were millions of years old, constructed from materials that defied current understanding of physics and engineering. More importantly, they weren't empty. "Has Dr. Reeves made any progress with the translation matrix?" Chen inquired. Torres consulted his tablet again. "She says the language patterns are becoming clearer. Apparently, whoever built these sites left incredibly detailed technical manuals. The quantum computing arrays we found are helping crack their mathematical notation systems." Chen allowed herself a small smile. The galaxy's exile had inadvertently granted humanity access to technologies that surpassed anything the Galactic Council possessed. The ancient builders, whoever they were, had developed methods of energy, manipulation, and space-time distortion that made current hyperspace travel look primitive. The Council monitoring stations haven't detected anything unusual, have they? "No, ma'am. As far as their sensors show, we're just building standard colonial infrastructure. The energy shielding from the ancient sites is masking our real activities perfectly." That was the second stroke of luck. The archaeological sites naturally generated interference fields that scrambled most scanning attempts. To outside observers, human space appeared to contain nothing more interesting than typical settlement construction and resource extraction. Behind that camouflage, humanity was reverse engineering technologies that had existed when the galaxy was young. Chen walked to the main display wall, where holographic projections showed the scope of their hidden project. 12 star systems, each containing multiple ancient sites, each site revealing new innovations that pushed human capabilities beyond anything they had possessed before leaving Council space. The manufacturing complexes on New Geneva are requesting additional quantum processors, Torres continued. The new ship designs are requiring computational power we've never needed before. The ships were Chen's particular pride. Using principles extracted from the ancient databases, human engineers had designed vessels that operated on fundamentally different principles than conventional spacecraft. No hyperspace drives, no conventional propulsion systems, no energy signatures that Council sensors would recognize as threatening. "How many prototype vessels are currently operational?" she asked. 17 in the primary test fleet, with another 34 in various stages of construction. The pilots report the new navigation systems are exceeding all performance expectations. Chen remembered her first flight in one of the prototype ships. The sensation had been unlike anything in her 40-year military career. Instead of the lurching acceleration of hyperspace jumps, the ancient propulsion technology seemed to fold space around the vessel, allowing it to step between distant points almost instantaneously. More unsettling was the ship's ability to phase partially out of normal spacetime, becoming undetectable to conventional sensors while maintaining full operational capability. The ancient builders had apparently considered stealth and mobility to be essential features of any advanced spacecraft. "What's our current production timeline?" Chen inquired. "If the resource extraction continues at current rates, we'll have approximately 300 vessels within 2 years. The larger ships will take longer, but the technical teams believe we can have a dozen capital-class vessels operational within 4 years. The capital ships were humanity's attempt to scale up the ancient technologies. Early simulations suggested they would be capable of feats that bordered on the impossible by current galactic standards, teleporting entire fleets across galactic distances, phasing massive installations in and out of normal space, creating energy fields that could disrupt planetary defense grids from light years away. Any problems with the integration teams?" Torres shook his head. "Morale remains high. Everyone understands what we're building here. The chance to prove the Council wrong about humanity has motivated the entire population. That motivation was perhaps humanity's greatest asset. Being forced into exile had united the species like never before. Old national rivalries and political divisions had been set aside in favor of a single goal, preparing for the day when humanity would remind the galaxy what they were truly capable of achieving. The civilian settlements are adapting well to the cover story protocols. Better than expected. Most people seem to enjoy the challenge of hiding our real activities from Council surveillance. It's become a point of pride to maintain perfect operational security." Chen appreciated that attitude. Keeping their discoveries secret required millions of people to maintain consistent cover stories while conducting the most advanced research projects in human history. The psychological pressure should have been overwhelming, but instead it had fostered a sense of shared purpose that strengthened their hidden civilization. "Ma'am, incoming priority transmission from the Vanguard expedition," Torres announced. "They're reporting another discovery in the outer systems." Chen's pulse quickened. The Vanguard missions were humanity's most classified operations, searching for ancient sites beyond their officially assigned territory. If they had found something significant, it could accelerate their timeline considerably. "What kind of discovery?" Torres paused, reading the encrypted message. His expression shifted to amazement. "Ma'am, they've found what appears to be an intact ancient shipyard. The preliminary scans suggest it's still partially functional." Chen felt the familiar thrill of discovery mixed with anticipation. An ancient shipyard would provide templates for vessels far more advanced than anything humanity had yet attempted to construct. It might also contain clues about who the ancient builders were and why they had vanished. Have they detected any Council monitoring activity in the area? Negative. The site is well beyond the boundary zones, in a system the Council considers uninhabitable, perfect for extended research operations. Chen nodded grimly. The galaxy had exiled humanity to prevent them from becoming dangerous, but isolation was giving them access to technologies that would have remained hidden if they had stayed in Council space. Within a few years, humanity would possess capabilities that no current galactic civilization could match or counter. The Council had assumed that cutting humanity off from galactic trade and technology would weaken them. Instead, it was forcing them to discover alternatives that surpassed anything the established powers possessed. Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the smooth obsidian surface of the control panel, feeling the ancient technology respond to her bioelectric signature. The massive chamber around her hummed with power that had been dormant for millions of years, awakening at her touch like a sleeping giant. Banks of crystalline displays flickered to life, showing star charts of galaxies that existed when Earth's sun was barely forming. Neural link established, she announced to her research team. I'm accessing the primary knowledge repository now. The sensation was unlike anything human science had prepared her for. Information flowed directly into her consciousness, bypassing normal sensory channels entirely. The ancient builders had developed technology that interfaced directly with neural pathways, allowing instantaneous transfer of vast databases of knowledge. What she discovered in those first moments changed everything humanity thought they knew about the galaxy. Elena, your vital signs are spiking, warned Dr. James Park, monitoring her life support systems. Should we abort the connection? No, she gasped, struggling to process the overwhelming influx of information. I'm seeing their history. The builders. They weren't alien. They were us. The revelation hit the research team like a physical blow. The ancient sites scattered across human space weren't relics of some unknown species. They were remnants of a previous human civilization that had achieved technological mastery beyond current imagination, before mysteriously vanishing from galactic records. That's impossible, Park protested. Human evolution only reached technological sophistication 12,000 years ago. These sites predate our entire civilization by millions of years. Vasquez maintained the neural connection despite the strain, desperate to understand the truth. The ancient memories flowing through the interface painted an incredible picture. Humans had once spread across the galaxy, not as the aggressive expansionists the Council feared, but as the galaxy's greatest builders and teachers. They called themselves the predecessors, she explained, her voice distant as she navigated the alien memories. They achieved technological transcendence and spent millions of years uplifting younger species, sharing knowledge freely across the galaxy. The knowledge repository contained detailed records of that ancient era. Humans had encountered primitive civilizations and guided their development, providing technology and wisdom without demanding tribute or territory. They had been the galaxy's gardeners, nurturing diversity and growth wherever they found potential. What happened to them? Asked Dr. Sarah Kim, the expedition's xenoarchaeologist. The memories became darker as Vasquez delved deeper into the historical records. The predecessors had eventually encountered something that challenged even their advanced capabilities. A threat from beyond the galaxy's edge that forced them to make an impossible choice. They faced extinction, Vasquez whispered. Something came from the void between galaxies. The records are fragmented, but it was spreading across star systems, consuming everything in its path. The predecessors realized they couldn't stop it with conventional warfare. The final chapters of that ancient struggle played out in her mind like a cosmic tragedy. The predecessors had developed a desperate strategy that required sacrificing their physical existence to save the galaxy. Using technologies that manipulated the fundamental nature of reality, they had transformed themselves into something beyond material existence. They became part of space-time itself, she explained, tears streaming down her face as she experienced their noble sacrifice. They turned their consciousness into a living barrier that contained the threat, preventing it from reaching the galaxy's inhabited systems. But that sacrifice had come with a terrible cost. The transformation had erased most traces of their civilization from galactic memory. The species they had uplifted forgot their benefactors, developing their own cultures and technologies without remembering who had given them their start. The galaxy forgot us, Vasquez continued. Millions of years passed and humanity was reborn on Earth, starting over from primitive beginnings while their descendants among the stars never recognized them. Dr. Park checked the neural interface readings, concerned about the strain on Vasquez's mind. Elena, you've been connected for over 6 hours. We should consider breaking the link. Wait, she insisted. There's more. The repositories aren't just historical records. They're instruction manuals. The predecessors left them as preparation for our return. The ancient humans had anticipated that their species would eventually redevelop space travel and rejoin the galactic community. The hidden sites were intended to help their descendants reclaim their rightful place as the galaxy's protectors when the time came. More disturbing was the knowledge that the ancient threat still existed, contained but not destroyed. The predecessor's sacrifice had created a prison of sorts, but prisons could be broken if the right conditions developed. The current galactic civilizations are in danger, Vasquez realized. The threat is stirring again. The predecessor's barrier is weakening after millions of years of containment. That's why the sites are activating now. They're preparing us for what's coming. The implications were staggering. Humanity's exile from Council space wasn't just unfortunate politics. It was necessary preparation for a war that no current galactic civilization could understand or survive. The ancient sites would provide the technologies and knowledge needed to face a threat that had once required the sacrifice of an entire advanced civilization to contain. "How long do we have?" Kim asked quietly. Vasquez accessed the repository's predictive models, her enhanced consciousness processing calculations that would have taken human computers decades to complete. The answer she found was both reassuring and terrifying. Approximately 50 years before the barrier fails completely. But there are signs the threat has been probing for weaknesses. Some of the recent spatial anomalies the Council has detected aren't natural phenomena. The ancient threat was already testing its prison, sending scouts through microscopic breaches in the predecessor's barrier. Most galactic civilizations dismiss these incidents as unexplained scientific curiosities, but the pattern was clear to anyone who understood the true nature of what was contained. The repository contains construction specifications for weapons and defensive systems designed specifically to combat this threat, Vasquez continued, but they require technologies far beyond what any current galactic civilization possesses. That was the final piece of the puzzle. Humanity's exile had been orchestrated by forces beyond the Galactic Council's understanding. The ancient sites had been calling to their descendants, drawing them back to the outer rim where the hidden repositories waited. The Council's decision to restrict human expansion had actually fulfilled the predecessor's plan. "We need to accelerate our construction programs," Park realized. "If this threat emerges while humanity is still rebuilding, the entire galaxy could be lost." Vasquez finally severed the neural connection, her consciousness reeling from the vast knowledge she had absorbed. The burden of understanding humanity's true heritage and destiny weighed heavily on her shoulders. They were not just another species struggling for survival. They were the heirs to the galaxy's greatest civilization, tasked with completing their ancestors' unfinished work. "There's something else," she added weakly. "The predecessors left a message specifically for this moment. They knew we would eventually access these repositories and learn the truth." She activated a secondary display system, projecting an image that made the entire research team step backward in amazement. A holographic figure appeared, clearly human despite clothing and technology that seemed impossibly advanced. The figure began to speak in a language that somehow every human present could understand perfectly, as if the words were being translated directly in their minds. "To our descendants who have reclaimed the stars," the ancient human said, "the time of preparation has ended. The time of remembrance has begun. Welcome home." Captain Marcus Webb materialized on the bridge of the HSV Remembrance as the ship completed its phase transition. The sensation of existing between dimensions still sending shivers down his spine even after months of training. Through the view screen, the Arcturus system spread before them like jewels scattered across black velvet. Completely unaware that humanity's most advanced reconnaissance vessel was observing their activities from a parallel layer of spacetime. "Stealth field holding steady," reported Navigation Officer Chen, her fingers dancing across controls that would have been incomprehensible to human engineers just 2 years earlier. "We're completely invisible to their sensor networks." Webb nodded, studying the tactical display that showed the positions of over 300 alien vessels, conducting what appeared to be routine patrol operations. The Arcturians were one of the Galactic Council's most militant member species, renowned for their advanced military technology and aggressive expansion policies. They were also humanity's first target for field testing. "Weapons, what's our tactical assessment?" Lieutenant Commander Singh consulted the data streaming from their enhanced sensor arrays. "Sir, their entire defense grid is optimized for conventional threats. Particle beam weapons, plasma torpedoes, standard shield configurations. Nothing they possess can detect or defend against predecessor." Technology, the irony wasn't lost on Webb. The same Galactic Council that had exiled humanity for being too aggressive was now completely vulnerable to technologies their ancestors had developed millions of years ago. The ancient humans had built weapons capable of fighting threats from beyond the galaxy. Using them against current galactic civilizations would be like bringing modern military equipment to a medieval battlefield. Communications, are you monitoring their network traffic? Yes, sir, replied Ensign Rodriguez. Their military communications are completely unencrypted by our standards. We have real-time access to their command structure, troop movements, and strategic planning databases. Webb allowed himself a grim smile. The predecessor neural interface technology had revolutionized human capabilities far beyond simple archaeology. Their computer systems could now crack alien encryption algorithms in real time, interface directly with foreign networks, and analyze vast amounts of data at speeds that seemed almost supernatural. What are they discussing currently? Rodriguez consulted her screens. Mainly routine patrol reports, but there are several references to increased council paranoia about the human situation. Apparently, some council members are questioning whether humanity accepted exile too easily. Interesting. Any indication they're planning to investigate our territory? Not directly, but there's discussion about requesting permission to conduct wellness checks on human settlements. The Arcturian High Command seems to be pushing for more aggressive monitoring of our activities. Webb considered this information carefully. Intelligence reports had suggested some council members were growing suspicious about humanity's quiet acceptance of exile. The discovery of ancient sites had been impossible to completely hide, and certain energy signatures were starting to attract attention despite their best efforts at concealment. Tactical. Project our engagement capabilities if this became a hostile situation. Singh ran the calculations through their enhanced combat computers. Sir, conservatively speaking, this single ship could neutralize their entire system defense grid within 47 minutes. Their weapons cannot penetrate our phase-shifted armor, and their ships cannot maneuver effectively against our space-folding drives. The assessment was sobering rather than encouraging. Humanity had gained capabilities that made them effectively invincible against current galactic military technology, but that power came with enormous responsibility. The predecessors had left detailed ethical guidelines about the use of their advanced technologies, emphasizing restraint and wisdom above raw force. Sir, incoming transmission from the command ship, Rodriguez announced. Admiral Thexavar is ordering increased patrols along the boundary zones with human space. They're specifically looking for signs of unusual technological development. Webb frowned. The Arcturians were more perceptive than intelligence had predicted. If they started conducting detailed scans of human territory, they might detect energy signatures that couldn't be explained by conventional technology. How long until their patrol routes bring them within scanning range of our outer settlements? Chen consulted the navigation computers. Approximately 6 standard days, assuming they maintain current deployment patterns. That timeline was uncomfortably tight. The hidden construction projects in human space were at critical stages, with several prototype weapons platforms nearing completion. Discovery now would force humanity to reveal their capabilities before they were fully prepared for the consequences. Options. Webb asked his senior staff. We could disable their long-range sensors, Singh suggested. Make it appear to be mechanical failures rather than sabotage. Buy ourselves several weeks of delay. Or we could feed false data into their surveillance networks, Rodriguez added. Make our activities appear completely normal while hiding the real construction projects. Both options required revealing human capabilities to some degree, but perhaps not enough to cause immediate alarm. The question was whether subtle interference would be sufficient or if more direct action would be necessary. Sir, there's another consideration, Chen interjected. Our deep space monitoring stations are detecting unusual spatial distortions in the outer rim sectors. The pattern matches theoretical predictions for barrier degradation. Webb's blood chilled. The ancient threat that had forced the predecessor's sacrifice was beginning to probe more aggressively. If the containment barrier failed while humanity was still rebuilding their technological base, the entire galaxy would be defenseless. How extensive are these distortions? Localized so far, but increasing in frequency and intensity. Dr. Vasquez's team estimates we have perhaps 40 years before critical barrier failure. But these probes suggest the timeline might be accelerating. The implications were staggering. Humanity needed to complete their reconstruction and preparation as quickly as possible, but they also needed to avoid galactic attention that could disrupt their efforts. The balance between speed and secrecy was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. "Sir, new development," Rodriguez announced urgently. "The Arcturian command ship is receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. Admiral Thexfar is being ordered to investigate reports of anomalous energy signatures detected by long-range monitoring stations." Webb cursed silently. Someone in Council space had detected something that couldn't be explained by conventional technology. The carefully maintained illusion of human compliance was beginning to crack. "Can you determine what specific signatures they detected?" "Analyzing the transmission data now," Rodriguez replied, her enhanced neural interface allowing her to process alien communications at superhuman speeds. "It appears to be quantum resonance patterns from our larger construction projects. The Council's monitoring stations detected energy output levels inconsistent with standard colonial infrastructure." The game was changing more rapidly than anyone had anticipated. Within days, possibly hours, Arcturian investigation fleets would be conducting detailed scans of human territory. They would discover construction projects that clearly surpassed any technology the exiled humans should have possessed. "Recommendations?" Webb asked grimly. "We could attempt to maintain the deception," Singh suggested. "Selective use of our capabilities to misdirect their investigations without revealing the full scope of our advancement. Or we could prepare for eventual disclosure," Chen countered. "Begin positioning our forces for the possibility that our secret won't remain hidden much longer." Webb considered both options, weighing them against the larger strategic picture. Humanity's ancestors had faced a similar choice millions of years ago, forced to reveal advanced capabilities to protect the galaxy from a threat most civilizations couldn't comprehend. "There's a third option," he realized. "We could accelerate the timeline. Instead of waiting for discovery, we reveal ourselves on our own terms." The bridge fell silent as the crew contemplated the implications. Revealing humanity's true capabilities would fundamentally alter the galactic balance of power, potentially triggering conflicts that could consume entire star systems. But continuing to hide might not be possible much longer, and the ancient threat was stirring with increasing boldness. The time for subtle preparation might be ending whether humanity was ready or not. "Sir, incoming priority message from Admiral Chen," Rodriguez announced. "Fleet Command is requesting immediate return to base for emergency strategic conference." Webb nodded grimly. The decision about humanity's future was about to be made at levels far above his authority. Within hours, the leadership of their hidden civilization would determine whether to continue the masquerade or prepare for humanity's dramatic return to galactic prominence. The galaxy was about to discover what their exile had really accomplished. The emergency session of humanity's High Command convened in the deepest chambers of Titan Station, where massive holographic displays showed real-time intelligence from across the galaxy. President Maria Santos stood before the assembled military and civilian leadership, her expression grim as she reviewed reports that would reshape their species' destiny within the next 72 hours. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Council has detected us," she announced without preamble. "Our intelligence networks confirm that investigation fleets are being dispatched to human space from 7 different member civilizations. We have perhaps 48 hours before they reach our outer territories." Admiral Chen stepped forward, her weathered face reflecting the weight of command decisions that would affect billions of lives. "Our stealth capabilities can delay discovery but not prevent it indefinitely. The quantum signatures from our largest construction projects are too distinctive to hide from dedicated investigation." Director Hayes of the Colonial Intelligence Service activated a 3-dimensional map showing Council fleet movements. "The Arcturians are leading the investigation, but they're being reinforced by Korthak battle groups and Altarian science vessels. This isn't a casual survey mission. They're prepared for the possibility of finding advanced military installations." The assembled leaders studied the tactical situation with growing concern. Humanity had always known this moment would eventually arrive, but the timeline had accelerated beyond their most pessimistic projections. The ancient sites were still yielding new technologies, many of which remained incompletely understood or integrated into human systems. "What's our current military readiness?" President Santos inquired. Fleet Admiral Rodriguez consulted his tactical assessment reports. "We have 437 advanced vessels operational, with another 200 in final construction phases. Our defensive installations protect all 12 primary systems. And our manufacturing capabilities are approaching full predecessor specifications. Those numbers would have been encouraging under normal circumstances, but the approaching investigation represented more than a simple military challenge. Discovery would force humanity into conflicts they weren't prepared to handle politically or strategically. What about our special projects? Santos asked quietly. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her neural implants allowing her to interface directly with the ancient knowledge repositories. The predecessor archives contain detailed specifications for technologies that surpass our current capabilities by several orders of magnitude. However, most of these systems require resources and construction techniques we haven't fully mastered. She activated a holographic display showing the most advanced predecessor designs. Weapons capable of manipulating stellar phenomena, ships that could phase entire fleets between dimensions, defensive systems that could render star systems completely invisible to outside detection. The timeline for deploying these technologies ranges from 6 months to several years, she continued. We simply haven't had enough time to fully understand our inheritance. President Santos nodded grimly. The irony was bitter. Humanity possessed the blueprints for technologies that could revolutionize galactic civilization, but they lacked the experience and infrastructure to implement them quickly enough to avoid the current crisis. What are our options? She asked the assembled council. General Morrison, commanding humanity's ground forces, spoke first. We could attempt full disclosure. Reveal our discoveries to the Galactic Council and hope they understand the implications of what we've found. The suggestion was met with skeptical murmurs. The same council that had exiled humanity for being too aggressive was unlikely to react positively to discovering they had gained access to weapons, technology that dwarfed anything in current galactic arsenals. Alternatively, Admiral Chen suggested, we could demonstrate our capabilities selectively, show enough advanced technology to establish our strength without revealing the full scope of what we've discovered. Director Hayes shook his head. Intelligence analysis suggests the Council would interpret any advanced human technology as confirmation of their original fears. Partial disclosure might trigger immediate military responses from multiple member civilizations. The third option remained unspoken, but understood by everyone present. Humanity could use their technological advantages to decisively establish themselves as the galaxy's dominant power, forcing recognition through strength rather than diplomacy. There's another consideration, Dr. Vasquez interjected. The ancient threat is becoming more active. Our monitoring stations are detecting increased barrier degradation, and some of the spatial anomalies are beginning to affect inhabited systems. She activated displays showing distortion patterns detected across the galaxy's outer regions. To most civilizations, these would appear to be unexplained natural phenomena. But compared to predecessor records, the patterns clearly indicated something was testing the ancient containment systems with growing boldness. How long before the barrier fails completely? President Santos asked. Conservative estimates suggest 30 to 40 years, Vasquez replied. But if the testing continues to accelerate, we could see critical failures within 2 decades. The timeline was becoming impossible to manage. Humanity needed decades to fully understand and implement predecessor technologies, but they had perhaps days before their secret was exposed and years before an ancient threat overwhelmed the galaxy's defenses. Ma'am, incoming priority transmission, announced Communications Director Park. It's from the Galactic Council's Investigation Command. They're requesting immediate communication with human leadership. The chamber fell silent. The moment of decision had arrived even faster than anticipated. Within minutes, humanity would need to choose between continued deception and some form of disclosure. President Santos straightened her shoulders, feeling the weight of humanity's future settling on her decisions. Put them through. The main display activated, showing Ambassador Zethkar's familiar insectoid features. His compound eyes reflected satisfaction that made Santos's skin crawl. President Santos, he began without pleasantries. Council investigation fleets have detected energy signatures from your territory that cannot be explained by standard colonial technology. You will immediately grant our ships unrestricted access to conduct comprehensive surveys of all human installations. The demand was delivered with the confidence of someone who believed they held all the advantages. Zethkar clearly expected humanity to submit to investigation with the same compliance they had shown during their exile. Ambassador, Santos replied carefully, Humanity has complied with all terms of our territorial restrictions. Our activities are entirely within the bounds of our assigned systems. That may be true, Zethkar acknowledged, but the energy patterns we have detected suggest technological capabilities that were not present when you departed Council space. The possibility of illegal technology transfer from restricted alien sources must be investigated. Santos exchanged glances with her advisors. The Council suspected some form of external assistance, but they had no concept of what humanity had actually discovered. Their assumptions might provide cover for limited disclosure. Ambassador, I can assure you that humanity has not received technology from any current galactic civilization, she said, truthfully. However, our territorial surveys have uncovered archaeological sites that predate known galactic history. Zethkar's mandibles clicked with interest. Archaeological discoveries could explain certain anomalies, but they would need to be examined by qualified Council xenoarchaeologists to verify their nature and origin. The suggestion was reasonable on the surface, but Santos knew that Council examination would quickly reveal the true nature of humanity's discoveries. Once they understood the implications of predecessor technology, the political situation would become impossible to control. We would be happy to cooperate with Council archaeological teams, she replied, but we must insist on maintaining sovereignty over our territorial systems during any investigation. That is not acceptable, Zethkar stated firmly. The energy signatures we have detected could represent a threat to galactic security. Council forces will assume temporary administrative control of human space until the investigation is complete. The ultimatum hung in the chamber like a physical presence. Humanity could submit to occupation and lose control of their most vital discoveries, or they could refuse and face immediate military confrontation with the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. President Santos looked around the chamber at humanity's leadership, seeing determination replacing fear in their expressions. The decision had been made for them by the Council's own aggressive stance. Ambassador, she said quietly, I'm afraid that's not going to happen. Zethkar's compound eyes focused intently on the transmission. President Santos, I trust you understand the implications of refusing a Council security mandate. The combined fleets approaching your territory possess overwhelming military superiority. Santos allowed herself a slight smile. Ambassador, with all due respect, I don't think you understand what humanity has become during our exile. I suggest your fleets maintain safe distances from our territory while we discuss this matter through proper diplomatic channels. Admiral Thexavar studied the tactical displays aboard his flagship as the combined Council investigation fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of human territory. 47 capital ships representing the galaxy's most advanced military civilizations formed an imposing battle line, their weapon systems powered and ready for any resistance the exiled humans might attempt. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple artificial structures throughout the human systems, reported his tactical officer. Energy output levels are significantly higher than standard colonial installations should produce. Thexavar's 4 eyes narrowed as he examined the sensor data. The humans had clearly been busy during their exile, but the construction patterns seemed oddly focused on certain planetary locations rather than distributed across all available worlds. Any response to our approach? Negative, Admiral. Human territory appears quiet. No military formations detected. No weapons platforms targeting our fleet. Either they're completely unprepared for our arrival, or they're hiding something significant. The Arcturian commander had expected some form of defensive posture from humanity. Their psychological profiles indicated a species with strong territorial instincts and militant responses to perceived threats. This calm acceptance of investigation seemed inconsistent with human nature. Admiral, called Communications Officer Vektash, we're receiving a transmission from the lead human settlement. Display it. The main screen activated, showing a human military officer with calm, confident bearing. Admiral Chen's expression revealed no trace of the fear or desperation Thexavar had expected from a cornered enemy. Admiral Thexavar, Chen began politely. I am Fleet Admiral Chen of Human Space Command. Welcome to our territory. Before you proceed with your investigation, there are certain safety protocols we must discuss. Thexavar's mandibles clicked with amusement. Admiral Chen, Your species is in no position to dictate safety protocols to a Council investigation fleet. You will immediately provide complete access to all human installations for inspection. I'm afraid that's not possible, Chen replied. The archaeological sites we've discovered contain technologies that could be dangerous if handled improperly. We must insist on controlled access with appropriate safety measures. Archaeological sites? Thexvar repeated skeptically. Our sensors indicate massive industrial complexes and energy production facilities. These are not primitive ruins, Admiral. Chen's expression didn't change. Admiral, I suggest you consult your historical databases regarding the predecessor civilization. You may find the information relevant to your investigation. Thexvar gestured for his intelligence officers to access the fleet's archaeological records. The search results were sparse. References to an ancient civilization that had supposedly existed millions of years ago, but most galactic historians considered the predecessors to be mythological rather than historical. Admiral Chen, Thexvar said dismissively, fairy tales about ancient super-civilizations will not explain the military-grade energy signatures we're detecting. You have 1 hour to grant full access or we will assume hostile intent and respond accordingly. The transmission ended, leaving the human admiral's final words hanging in the bridge's tense atmosphere. Admiral, you have no idea what you're threatening. Deploy investigation teams to the nearest human installations, Thexvar ordered. Full-spectrum scans of all facilities. I want to know what they're hiding. The Council fleet's scout ships accelerated toward human space, their sensors active and weapons ready. As they crossed the boundary markers, something unprecedented occurred. Admiral, his sensor operator called urgently. The human installations just disappeared. Thexvar spun toward the tactical displays, seeing impossible readings. Massive industrial complexes that had been clearly visible moments before were simply gone, as if they had never existed. Sensor malfunction? Negative, sir. All systems are functioning normally. The installations appear to have phased out of normal spacetime. Before Thexvar could process this information, new contacts appeared on the displays. Ships were materializing throughout the Council fleet's formation. Vessels with designs that defied conventional understanding of spacecraft engineering. Admiral. Communications reported. We're receiving another transmission from Admiral Chen. The human officer appeared on screen again, but this time she was clearly aboard one of the mysterious vessels that had appeared among the Council fleet. Admiral Thexvar, Chen said calmly, you are currently surrounded by technologies that predate your civilization by millions of years. Our weapons are targeted on every ship in your fleet. Your shields and armor are completely ineffective against predecessor technology. Thexvar checked his tactical displays, confirming that unknown vessels had somehow materialized within point-blank range of every Council ship. His fleet's defensive systems showed no indication that they had detected the approaching vessels until they were already in position. This is impossible, he muttered. Admiral, Chen continued, humanity has no desire for conflict with the Galactic Council. However, we will not permit interference with our work. You have discovered technologies that could transform galactic civilization, but they come with responsibilities that current galactic leaders are not prepared to handle. What do you want? Thexvar demanded. To complete our preparation, Chen replied. The galaxy faces a threat that destroyed the predecessor civilization millions of years ago. That threat is stirring again, testing the barriers that have contained it for so long. We are rebuilding the defenses that once protected all galactic life. Admiral Thexvar felt a chill that had nothing to do with his ship's environmental systems. The implications of Chen's words were staggering, but the demonstration of human capabilities made them impossible to dismiss. If such a threat existed, he said slowly, why has the Council never detected it? Because the predecessors were our ancestors, Chen explained. Humanity's first galactic civilization sacrificed itself to contain this threat. We are their heirs, tasked with completing their work when the time comes. The bridge fell silent as Thexvar and his crew processed this revelation. Humanity wasn't just another aggressive species. They were the inheritors of the galaxy's greatest ancient civilization, and they possessed technologies that surpassed anything in current existence. Admiral, his science officer whispered, our deep space monitoring stations have been detecting spatial anomalies for several years. Command classified them as unexplained natural phenomena, but if there's an ancient threat, Thexvar realized the horrible truth. The Council's decision to exile humanity, had been based on completely wrong assumptions. Instead of containing a threat, they had inadvertently isolated the galaxy's only hope of defense against something far more dangerous than human expansion. "Admiral Chen," he said carefully, "if what you say is true, why didn't humanity inform the Council about these discoveries?" Chen's expression became grim. "Because the Council exiled us for being too aggressive when we were weak. How would they react to learning we now possess weapons that could destroy entire star systems? Would they trust us to use such power responsibly?" The question hung in space like an accusation. Thexvar knew the answer. The Council would have seen advanced human capabilities as confirmation of their worst fears, triggering immediate military responses that could have erupted into galactic war. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "Now you return to the Council with a choice," Chen replied. "They can continue to treat humanity as a threat to be contained, in which case we will complete our work in isolation and hope we're ready when the ancient enemy breaks free. Or they can accept that their exiled humans have become the galaxy's protectors and help us prepare for what's coming. And if the Council chooses confrontation?" Chen's expression hardened. "Admiral, your fleet represents the finest military technology the galaxy currently possesses. You have just witnessed how easily we can neutralize it without firing a shot. Do you really want to discover what predecessor weapons are capable of when used with hostile intent?" The demonstration had made the balance of power absolutely clear. Humanity now possessed capabilities that made conventional galactic military technology obsolete. Any attempt to force compliance would result in decisive defeat for Council forces. "Admiral," Thexvar said slowly, "I will convey your message to the Council, but they will demand proof of these claims about ancient threats. The proof is already visible to anyone who knows how to interpret the data," Chen replied. "The spatial anomalies your monitoring stations have detected are increasing in frequency and intensity. Soon the signs will become obvious even to those who don't understand their true nature." The human ships began to phase out of normal space, disappearing as mysteriously as they had arrived. Within moments, the Council investigation fleet was alone at the edge of human territory, their sensors once again detecting the industrial installations that had temporarily vanished. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "Admiral Chen is transmitting technical specifications for enhanced sensor arrays. She says they will allow us to detect the true nature of the spatial anomalies." Thexvar accepted the data transfer, knowing that his mission had fundamentally changed. Instead of investigating human compliance with Council, the Grand Assembly Chamber of the Galactic Council had never hosted a session quite like this one. Representatives from 900 species filled the crystalline amphitheater, their voices creating a cacophony of fear, anger, and confusion as they debated humanity's shocking revelations. At the chamber's center, Ambassador Zethkar stood before holographic displays showing the enhanced sensor data that Admiral Thexvar had brought back from human space. The readings were undeniable and terrifying. Across the galaxy's outer rim, spatial distortions were appearing with increasing frequency. What galactic science had dismissed as random anomalies now showed clear patterns when viewed through predecessor technology. Something vast and hostile was testing the barriers that had contained it for millions of years. "The evidence is conclusive," announced Senior Counselor Threshgan, his bulbous head weaving as he processed the implications. "The spatial anomalies match theoretical predictions for extragalactic intrusion attempts. The humans appear to be telling the truth about an ancient threat." Counselor Vrixta's tentacles coiled nervously around her ceremonial staff. "But can we trust them? They concealed advanced military capabilities for over 2 years. How do we know this isn't an elaborate deception designed to justify their technological superiority?" The question reflected the Council's central dilemma. Humanity had demonstrated capabilities that surpassed anything in current galactic arsenals, but their claims about ancient threats and inherited responsibilities seemed almost too convenient. Some Council members suspected the humans had fabricated the crisis to legitimize their emergence as a galactic superpower. Perhaps the threat is real, but humanity's role as protectors is self-appointed, suggested the Centaurian delegate. They may have discovered advanced technology and created a mythology around it to justify their dominance. Ambassador Zethkar activated additional displays, showing the technical specifications Admiral Chen had provided. These sensor enhancement protocols reveal threat signatures that our best scientists cannot fake or fabricate. The technology involved operates on principles we barely understand. The enhanced readings painted a disturbing picture. The spatial anomalies weren't random events but coordinated probes testing specific points along what appeared to be a vast containment barrier. Something was mapping the galaxy's defenses, searching for weaknesses that could be exploited. Even if we accept the reality of this threat, interjected the Altarian representative, humanity's response has been to secretly develop weapons that could destroy our entire civilization. They have positioned themselves as our saviors while becoming capable of our conquest. That concern echoed throughout the chamber. Many delegates feared that humanity was using the threat as cover for their own imperial ambitions. The same species the Council had exiled for aggressive expansion now possessed the means to dominate the galaxy through force. What alternative do we have? Asked the Vegan observer. If this ancient enemy is real, our current military capabilities are clearly insufficient. The humans demonstrated that our finest battle fleets are helpless against predecessor technology. The demonstration at the edge of human space had shattered many assumptions about galactic military balance. Council forces had been rendered completely powerless without humanity firing a single weapon. The implications for future conflicts were sobering. We could demand shared access to these technologies, proposed Councillor Vrixta. If humanity truly serves as the galaxy's protectors, they should be willing to distribute defensive capabilities among all civilized species. Zethkar consulted his intelligence reports. Our analysis suggests the predecessor technologies require neural interfaces and consciousness-machine fusion that most species cannot achieve. The technology appears to be biologically locked to human neural patterns. That revelation sparked new debates throughout the chamber. If the ancient technologies truly were species-specific, then the galaxy's defense against the coming threat would depend entirely on humanity's willingness to act as protectors rather than conquerors. There is another consideration, announced the elderly Thessian delegate, her crystal form resonating with harmonious tones. Our historical databases contain fragmentary references to the predecessor civilization. They were described as benevolent gardeners, who helped younger species develop their potential. If humanity shares that heritage, the suggestion that humans might genuinely intend to protect rather than dominate the galaxy received mixed reactions. Some delegates found hope in the ancient accounts, while others worried that millions of years could have corrupted humanity's original noble purposes. Ma'am, interrupted a council aide, we're receiving a priority transmission from human space. President Santos is requesting permission to address the assembly. The chamber fell silent. Humanity's leader had never spoken directly to the full Galactic Council, and her timing suggested developments that could reshape the entire discussion. Grant the transmission, Threshkin ordered. The main display activated, showing President Santos standing in what appeared to be an ancient chamber filled with crystalline technology that pulsed with subtle energy. Her expression was grave as she surveyed the assembled delegates. Honorable representatives, she began, I address you not as the leader of exiled humanity, but as the inheritor of responsibilities that predate your civilizations. The time for secrets has ended. Behind her, holographic displays activated showing real-time monitoring of the spatial distortions across the galaxy. The patterns were accelerating, with new intrusion attempts occurring every few hours. The ancient enemy we have warned you about is no longer testing our defenses, Santos continued. As of 6 hours ago, the first breach in the predecessor containment barrier has been detected. Advanced scouts from beyond the galaxy have begun entering our reality. Panic erupted throughout the chamber as delegates processed the implications. The threat was no longer theoretical or distant. It was active and present in their galaxy. 3 star systems in the outer rim have gone silent, Santos reported grimly. Our deep space monitors show the same energy patterns that preceded the predecessor civilization's destruction millions of years ago. The consumption has begun. The displays showed the affected systems, their stellar signatures altered in ways that defied conventional understanding of physics. Whatever had emerged from beyond the galaxy was changing the fundamental nature of matter and energy in the regions it occupied. What can be done? Called out Senior Counselor Threshgan. Humanity is activating the predecessor defense protocols immediately, Santos replied. We will deploy technology specifically designed to combat this threat. But we cannot protect the entire galaxy alone. We need the cooperation of every civilized species if we hope to prevent total galactic consumption. The request for cooperation rather than submission surprised many delegates. Instead of demanding authority over galactic defense, humanity was asking for partnership in fighting an enemy none of them could face alone. What form would this cooperation take? Asked Counselor Vrixta cautiously. Resource sharing, population evacuation coordination, and technological integration where possible, Santos explained. We can provide defensive technologies that will protect your core systems, but manufacturing the necessary equipment will require the industrial capacity of the entire galaxy. The offer was both generous and practical. Humanity would share their advanced defensive capabilities in exchange for the manufacturing support needed to deploy them on a galactic scale. And after the threat is defeated? Pressed the Centaurian delegate. What becomes of humanity's advanced capabilities? Santos paused, consulting with advisors off-screen before responding. The predecessor archives contained detailed protocols for post-crisis governance. They established principles for advanced civilizations interacting with younger species, emphasizing guidance rather than dominance. Humanity will honor those principles. The promise carried weight because it referenced ancient precedents rather than current human intentions. The predecessor civilization was remembered as benevolent in the fragmentary historical accounts, providing hope that their inheritors would follow similar ethical guidelines. How long do we have to make this decision? Asked Ambassador Zethkar. Santos's expression darkened. The enemy's consumption rate is exponential. Based on current expansion patterns, they will reach the galaxy's populated core systems within 18 months. Decisions must be made within days, not weeks or months. The timeline forced immediate choices that could determine the fate of galactic civilization. Council delegates faced the stark reality that their traditional political processes were too slow for the crisis they now faced. President Santos called Senior Counselor Threshgan, assuming the Council agrees to cooperation. What would be humanity's first priority? Evacuation, Santos replied immediately. The outer rim systems closest to the breach points cannot be defended with current technology. We need to relocate approximately 2 billion inhabitants to safer regions while establishing defensive perimeters around core systems. The scope of the operation was staggering, but the alternative was allowing those populations to be consumed by an enemy that left nothing behind but altered space-time. The Council will convene emergency sessions to formalize